Did you know that Princess Anne had several affairs during her first marriage? She has always kept a high level of privacy regarding her personal life. But there have been rumors about affairs during her marriage to Mark Phillips. Some insiders even suggested that both Anne and Mark had extramarital relationships. Mark Phillips was rumored to have a long-term affair with a mysterious woman. But now, at age 74, Princess Anne is finally admitting what we all suspected. So what's going on with all the rumors and speculation regarding Princess Anne's romantic life? Let's find out in today's video. Before getting to her newest confessions, let's go back to where it all started. Princess Anne's early years. Princess Anne, born on August 15, 1950 at 11:50 a.m. BST, came into the world at Clarence House, which was the official home of her family during her granddad King George VI's reign. Princess Anne was the second child and the only daughter of Princess Elizabeth, who would later become Queen Elizabeth II, and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. Her arrival was celebrated with a 21-gun salute in Hyde Park, a traditional royal way to mark such an occasion. Anne was baptized in the music room of Buckingham Palace on October 21, 1950, by the Archbishop of York, Cyril Garbett. At the time, she was third in line for the British throne, right after her mum and her big brother Charles, who would eventually become King Charles III. When her grandfather, King George VI, passed away in 1952 and her mum took the crown, Anne moved up to become second in line. These days, she's 17th in line for the throne. To help raise Anne and her brothers, Charles, Andrew, and Edward, a governess named Catherine Peebles was brought on board. Peebles was in charge of Anne's early education while the family lived at Buckingham Palace. Since she was quite young, Anne didn't attend her mum's coronation in June 1953. However, in May 1959, a special Girl Guides company was set up just for her, called the First Buckingham Palace Company, which included the Holy Trinity Brompton Brownie Pack. Anne kicked off her formal education at Benenden School in 1963 and stayed there until 1968. While at Benenden, she bagged 6 GCE O-levels and 2 A-levels. After finishing school, she jumped into her official royal duties at the age of 18 in 1969. Anne's early years were all about her royal upbringing, education, and stepping into the spotlight. But what kept her in the royal family, and why did she end up divorcing her husband? Keep watching to find out. Anne is a sport enthusiast. In the spring of 1971, Princess Anne scored a big win by finishing 4th at the Rushall Horse Trials. At just 21 years old, she clinched the individual title at the European Eventing Championship with her horse, Double. This impressive achievement earned her the title of BBC Sports Personality of the Year for 1971. But Anne's talents didn't stop there. She also took part in horse racing. She competed in some top races like the Grand Military Steeplechase at Sandown Park Racecourse and the Diamond Stakes at Royal Ascot, showing off her versatility as an equestrian competitor. Throughout the 1970s, Princess Anne was a standout member of the British eventing team. She played a key role in their success at the 1975 European Eventing Championship, where they bagged silver medals in both individual and team events. Her accomplishments reached an international audience when she competed in the 1976 Olympic Games in Montreal, riding the Queen's horse, Goodwill, in the eventing competition. Though she suffered a concussion halfway through the course, she didn't let that stop her. She got back on and finished the event. Anne also shone at the Badminton Horse Trials, where she finished 4th in 1974 and 6th in 1979. Over the years, Princess Anne took part in the prestigious Badminton Horse Trials 5 times between 1971 and 1979. In 1985, she joined a charity horse race during the Epsom Derby and once again finished in 4th place. But her achievements in competition were just the tip of the iceberg. She's been super active in the equestrian community in many different ways. From 1986 to 1994, she served as the president of the Fédération Équestre Internationale, which gave her a chance to make a real impact on the sport worldwide. Then, on February 5, 1987, she made history by becoming the first royal to compete on a TV quiz show. She appeared on the BBC panel game A Question of Sport, where she showed off her knowledge and competitive edge. Since 1971, Princess Anne has also been a patron of the Riding for the Disabled Association, and she became the president of the organization in 1985, a role she still holds today. This position highlights her commitment to improving opportunities for people with disabilities through horseback riding. In June 2024, Princess Anne faced a bit of a health scare when she was admitted to Southmead Hospital due to minor injuries and a concussion, likely caused by an accident involving a horse. Even with this hiccup, her ongoing contributions to equestrian sports and her dedication to charitable causes remain a huge part of her legacy. Princess Anne juggles a huge variety of responsibilities and engagements on behalf of the Queen. Kevin S. McLeod, who was the Canadian Secretary to the Queen in 2014, summed up her attitude towards her royal duties perfectly. Her credo is, "Keep me busy. I'm here to work. I'm here to do good things. I'm here to meet as many people as possible." This mindset shows just how dedicated she is to her role and her determination to make a positive difference through her work. In December 2017, it was reported that Princess Anne had completed the highest number of official engagements that year compared to everyone else in the royal family, including her mum, Queen Elizabeth II. That really highlights how active she is in representing the royal family. Throughout her career, she's traveled all over the globe for official visits. Anne's first public engagement happened in 1969 when she attended the opening of an educational and training center in Shropshire. After finishing secondary school, she started taking on overseas duties, with her first international trip being a state visit to Austria with her parents that same year. She also joined them on their first tour of Australia in 1970. Since then, she's made countless trips to Australia, fulfilling her official duties, like serving as the Colonel-in-Chief of an Australian regiment and attending important memorials, such as the National Memorial Service for the victims of the Black Saturday bushfires in Melbourne on February 22, 2009. In 1990, Princess Anne made history as the first royal family member to visit the Soviet Union. She went as a guest of President Mikhail Gorbachev and his government, marking a significant milestone in her diplomatic engagements. In August 2016, Princess Anne made a return trip to Russia to visit Arkhangelsk, celebrating the 75th anniversary of Operation Dervish, one of the early Arctic convoys during World War II. However, later that September, she had to cancel some of her official engagements because of a chest infection. In October 2016, she embarked on a 2-day study tour of the Malaysian state of Sarawak. Fast forward to April 2022, and she and her husband went on a tour of Australia and Papua New Guinea to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, celebrating 70 incredible years on the throne. One of the standout moments of Princess Anne's career happened on September 12, 2022, when she became the first woman ever to take part in a Vigil of the Princes. This traditional ceremony at St. Giles's Cathedral in Edinburgh saw her standing guard over her mother's coffin as part of the ceremonial tribute. She later repeated this poignant role at Westminster Hall on September 16, 2022. Following the Queen's passing, it was revealed that Anne was also the one who signed the death certificate at Balmoral, alongside the attending doctor. Princess Anne's extensive and varied work, both in the UK and abroad, really highlights her commitment to her royal duties and her important role in the royal family's public life. So, how does the public view Princess Anne? Let's take a look. Princess Anne's image, public respect, and style. Princess Anne is often seen as the royal family's trustiest anchor, and a beacon of good old-fashioned public service, having completed over 20,000 official engagements since she turned 18. Princess Anne's dedication to her duties and her approach to public service have secured her a special spot in the royal family and won her a lot of admiration from the public. In her early years as a royal, she was sometimes seen as a bit of a royal renegade because she decided not to give titles to her children, even though she was the spare to the heir in the line of succession. This choice showed she was ready to break away from tradition and embrace a more modern approach to royal life. The media back then often painted her as aloof and haughty, even dubbing her royal rudeness because of her blunt demeanor and straightforward style. For instance, in 1982, she made headlines when she told photographers to naff off during the badminton horse trials, which stirred up quite a bit of controversy. Vanity Fair described her as having inherited her father's sharp tongue and quick wit, which sometimes came off as brusque but was just part of her honest, no-nonsense personality. Despite facing these early challenges, Anne's commitment to her public roles has been nothing short of impressive. She's frequently hailed as the hardest-working royal, having completed a staggering 11,088 official engagements between 2002 and 2022, more than any other member of the royal family. Her approach to her work is driven by a strong sense of duty rather than a desire for public approval. Looking back on her early public service experiences, she noted that it took her about 10 years to feel confident enough to contribute meaningfully to public debates, especially for organizations like Save the Children. She highlighted that her work is all about making a real impact rather than just ticking boxes. Princess Anne is still one of Britain's most cherished royals. Telegraph editor Camilla Tominey has referred to her as a national treasure and one of the great English eccentrics, applauding her strong work ethic and unwavering dedication. Tominey pointed out that Anne's public role combines a strict adherence to protocol with a sprinkle of rule-breaking, making her a unique and well-loved figure. For example, Anne is known for her no-nonsense approach to her duties, which includes driving herself to engagements and handling her own hair and makeup. She's even been fined twice for speeding because she was running late to appointments. Additionally, Anne tends to skip shaking hands with the public during her walkabouts, explaining that it's just not practical to shake hands with everyone. Her down-to-earth nature shines through in simple moments, like mending fences at Gatcombe, or queuing up for the Portaloos at her daughter's horse competitions. She also champions causes that are a bit off the beaten path, such as the Wet Wheels Foundation, which aims to make sailing accessible for everyone, and the National Lighthouse Museum. When she turned 60 and 70, there was some chatter about whether she might retire, but she firmly shot down those suggestions. She pointed to the example set by her parents and her own commitment to her royal duties as reasons to keep going. Princess Anne's public persona beautifully blends a straightforward, down-to-earth attitude with a remarkable level of grace and courtesy. In terms of fashion, British Vogue editor Edward Enninful has hailed Princess Anne as a true style icon, noting that she was ahead of her time when it came to sustainable fashion. Princess Anne's style is celebrated for its timeless quality, often showcasing British brands and classic designs. She's well known for her love of tweed and tailored suits, and she's famous for recycling outfits, like a floral print dress she wore to both the wedding of the Prince of Wales in 1981 and Lady Rose Windsor's wedding in 2008. Not only that, but she's also the patron of the UK Fashion and Textile Association and has a reputation for rocking bold patterns and vibrant colors. Her fashion choices often reflect her passion for equestrian activities and the demands of her busy schedule. In the 70s and 80s, you could catch her in trends like puff sleeves, cardigans, and bright floral patterns. Anne is one of the few women in the royal family to don a military uniform, and according to The Guardian, she's rarely seen at royal events without a brooch. Her hats have ranged from jockey caps to colorful patterned styles, showcasing her unique flair. In addition to her fashion influence, Anne has graced the covers of British Vogue 3 times, starting with the September 1971 issue when she was just 21. She appeared again in the May and November 1973 issues in celebration of her engagement to Mark Phillips. Plus, she made the cover of Vanity Fair's May 2020 issue. In 2024, Tatler recognized her as one of the most glamorous European royals, highlighting her lasting impact on royal duties and fashion. Before Mark Phillips, Princess Anne had a few other romantic involvements. Let's go over those first. Princess Anne's romantic engagements and entanglements. When Princess Anne was just 20, she fell head over heels for Richard Meade, a talented Olympic equestrian rider who was 12 years her senior. Despite the chemistry between them, Anne's dad, Prince Philip, wasn't thrilled about their relationship, mainly because of the age gap. He made his disapproval known, which created quite a tough situation for the young couple. According to Ryan Huey, who was both a biographer and a friend of Meade's, this family pressure eventually led to Anne and Richard calling it quits after less than 2 years together. Throughout her early years, Princess Anne had a few romantic interests, but her love life was often shaped by the expectations and pressures of her royal family. However, she eventually found someone she truly connected with when she met Captain Mark Phillips, who shared her love for horse riding. Their paths crossed in 1968 at a horse riding event in Mexico City, and it was clear that their mutual passion for equestrian sports played a huge role in bringing them together. Mark Phillips was born in 1948 and followed in the footsteps of many in his family by joining the military. He trained at the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, preparing to become a military officer. After completing his education, he served as a second lieutenant and eventually worked his way up to the rank of captain by the time he and Anne started their relationship. But it wasn't just his military career that defined him. Mark was also a dedicated horse rider who enjoyed notable success in equestrian sports, including winning a gold medal as part of the British equestrian team at the 1972 Olympic Games. Mark's impressive achievements and background made him a perfect match for Anne, who was equally passionate about the equestrian world. Although Anne and Mark first met in 1968, their relationship didn't instantly turn romantic. After their initial encounter, Anne dated another guy, Andrew Parker Bowles. You might know Andrew as Camilla Parker Bowles' ex-husband, who later became the Queen Consort. Anne and Andrew started dating in 1970, a few years after their paths first crossed. Their families had a long-standing connection, as Andrew's dad was friends with the Queen Mother, making their relationship feel a bit like fate. However, Anne and Andrew's romance hit a major roadblock. As pointed out, Andrew was a Catholic, and at that time, marrying a Catholic was a big no-no for the royal family, which is the leader of the Church of England. This religious difference made it impossible for their relationship to move toward marriage. So, Anne and Andrew decided to call it quits, and he later married Camilla Parker Bowles in 1973. That same year, as Anne wrapped up her relationship with Andrew, she made a big announcement. She was engaged to Captain Mark Phillips. Despite her past with Andrew, Anne and Mark's romance flourished, and they were excited to make plans for their future together. Interestingly, even after their romantic involvement ended, Anne and Andrew managed to stay friends and remained part of each other's lives. Now let's take a peek into Princess Anne's engagement and marriage to Captain Mark Phillips. What was that all about? Princess Anne's engagement ring and wedding. Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips got engaged in May 1973, marking a big moment in their lives and for the royal family. Their relationship had its fair share of ups and downs over the years, but by this point they were more than ready to tie the knot. And speaking of tying the knot, the engagement ring Mark chose for Anne was quite the stunner. It featured a gorgeous square-cut sapphire flanked by 2 sparkling diamonds on either side. The ring was pretty sizable, making it a real showstopper on Anne's delicate finger. When their engagement was officially announced, the media went wild with interest about the couple's future. There were plenty of questions floating around about whether their love could withstand the pressures of public life and royal responsibilities. Anne, ever the confident one, had a straightforward response. Can? It's got to, hasn't it? This showed just how determined she was to make their marriage work, no matter the challenges that came with being in the spotlight. Their wedding took place on November 14, 1973, and it was a grand affair that caught the attention of people around the globe. Princess Anne was the first of her siblings to get married, which added to the buzz and excitement surrounding the event. The ceremony was held at Westminster Abbey, one of London's most iconic and historic churches. On the big day, the Abbey was packed with spectators, and the whole event was broadcast live on television, raking in an impressive audience of around 500 million viewers. The broadcast of Princess Anne's wedding was monumental, turning into an 8-hour-long special on the BBC. The significance of the occasion was so great that November 14th was declared a national holiday in the UK. The wedding dress and tiara. Princess Anne's wedding dress was a stunning example of royal elegance, featuring a high collar, bell-shaped sleeves, and a dramatic 7-foot-long train. This beautiful gown was paired with the Queen Mary fringe tiara, a cherished piece of royal jewelry that Queen Elizabeth had worn on her own wedding day to Prince Philip. By choosing to wear the tiara, Anne honored her mother and continued a family tradition. The wedding was not just a personal celebration for Anne and Mark, but also a moment of national pride and significance for the UK. Starting a family. As Anne and Mark embarked on the journey of starting a family, their lives began to shift in significant ways. New priorities emerged, schedules became more complicated, and life naturally grew a bit more hectic. They welcomed their first child, Peter, in 1977, and their second child, Zara, in 1981. While having children is typically a joyous occasion for Anne and Mark, it brought underlying issues in their marriage to the surface. According to reports from Express, the birth of Zara proved to be a turning point that exposed the cracks in their relationship. The couple began to drift apart, highlighting the challenges they faced as they navigated the demands of parenthood alongside their royal duties. The stresses of their growing family and the expectations of royal life began to take a toll on their marriage, marking the beginning of a difficult period for both Anne and Mark. By the early 80s, Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips were spending more and more time apart. Their relationship was sliding downhill, to the point where they started booking separate hotel rooms whenever they traveled outside the UK. This clear physical distance showed just how emotionally disconnected they had become. Unlike other royal couples like Prince Charles and Princess Diana, whose dramas played out in the spotlight, Anne and Mark's issues didn't attract as much media attention. This gave them a bit more freedom to be honest about what was really going on. Anne had sort of settled into a supporting role in both her public life and personal life. She was juggling her royal duties while backing Mark in his own career. But just because she accepted this didn't mean their marital problems were any less obvious. After 15 years of marriage, it became pretty clear to friends and family that both Anne and Mark were unhappy. By the time things were coming to a head, it was obvious to everyone that neither of them was really satisfied. Their relationship had turned into a sort of mutual indifference, like they were just going through the motions without any real care or connection. It was described as a loveless union, just floating along without any spark. So, what were the reasons that caused Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips to part ways? Stay tuned, and we'll dive into those details. The real reason behind Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips' divorce. One of the main reasons for Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips' split was Mark's affair with another woman while he was still married to Anne. He had a relationship with Heather Tonkin, an art teacher from New Zealand, which led to the birth of their daughter Felicity in 1985. Although this wasn't public knowledge at the time, a DNA test in 1991 confirmed that Mark was indeed Felicity's dad. Before that test came back, Mark had been secretly sending money to Heather and Felicity to support them. To keep everything under wraps, Mark got Heather a job as a consultant for equestrian matters, cleverly disguising the money he gave her as a professional fee. He was shelling out about $8,300 a year this way, according to Express. In 1991, Heather decided to go public with her story because Mark was dragging his feet on the payments. She wanted him to officially acknowledge Felicity as his daughter and have his name added to her birth certificate. Before she went public, Mark's agent, John Erskine, even tried to intimidate her into keeping quiet by threatening to make her life a nightmare. So in short, the affair with Heather Tonkin and the secret payments really drove a wedge between Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips. But that wasn't the only issue. There were even more affairs on Mark's part. While still married to Anne, he was known to have several flings, including one with Pamela Bordes, who was a call girl at the time. He also had brief relationships with a Canadian PR executive and a British television anchorwoman. All these factors contributed to the growing distance and indifference in their marriage. On the flip side, Princess Anne wasn't exactly sitting back either. She was rumored to have had her own affairs. One name that popped up was Anthony Andrews, an actor famous for his roles in British television dramas. There were also whispers about a romance with her bodyguard, Peter Cross. Things got pretty scandalous when Scotland Yard officials accused him of being a bit too cozy with Anne, which raised serious eyebrows for someone in his position. Cross even went to the tabloids, describing their relationship as a special friendship and saying they were extremely close friends, according to Express. But the biggest buzz was around Anne's rumored affair with Commander Timothy Lawrence. This whole situation turned into quite a scandal in modern royal history. It kicked off when 4 personal letters from Timothy to Anne were stolen from the palace and leaked to The Sun, one of the UK's biggest newspapers. While the paper didn't publish the actual letters to dodge legal issues, just the fact that they had them created a massive stir. The palace had to respond, stating, "We have nothing to say about the contents of personal letters sent to Her Royal Highness by a friend which were stolen and are currently being investigated by the police." This did nothing to calm the media storm, though. The letters weren't just from any old friend. They were from Commander Timothy Lawrence, the guy she was reportedly seeing while still married to Captain Mark Phillips. Lawrence had joined the royal entourage in 1986 and quickly became a well-known face at royal events, which only added fuel to the fire regarding Anne and Mark's crumbling marriage. It's a tangled web of relationships that kept everyone talking. He was spotted with Queen Elizabeth on a bunch of important occasions, including her meeting with Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev. This was a big diplomatic moment aimed at warming up UK-Russia relations. During this period, Anne and Timothy's bond got stronger. In fact, Anne made him one of her personal advisors for her trust, which was a big deal and showed how much she cared for him. A close friend of Timothy's shared that the feelings were definitely mutual, saying, "Anne has treated him as her closest confidant for a long time." Sure, Tim and the princess were physically attracted to each other, but their friendship runs deeper than that. He shows her the kind of care her husband doesn't. As their connection blossomed, Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips started leading pretty separate lives. By the late 80s, their marriage was really feeling the strain, and they often traveled apart just to avoid each other. In 1989, they announced their separation, although they initially claimed they had no plans for an immediate divorce. But honestly, that separation just pushed them further apart. Eventually, it turned into a full-blown divorce. In 1992, after 18 years of marriage, Princess Anne officially filed for divorce from Captain Mark Phillips. This divorce was one of 3 royal splits that happened that year alone. It all wrapped up super quickly. The judge gave the green light in just 4 minutes, and that was that. Anne and Mark went their separate ways. Even though they said the separation was mutual, the divorce made it all official.
Recently, Princess Diana's dressmaker spoke up about rumors within the royal family. Princess Anne, who is known for being very direct and outspoken, has said some pretty nasty things to Camilla Parker. In today's video, we'll talk about what might have caused these outbursts. We are going to look into Princess Anne and Camilla's lives, their jobs in the royal family, and why they might not get along. Is this just another case of royal fuss, or is there more going on? Let's get to the bottom of it. There is Camilla Rosemary Shand on one side of the royal stage. She was born on July 17, 1947, at King's College Hospital in London. In her early years, she had a lot of charm and wealth. They spent time at both their 18th century country house in East Sussex, called The Lanes, and their home in London, called South Kensington. Major Bruce Shand was an officer in the British Army who later became a businessman. His wife, Rosalind Cubitt, was the daughter of the 3rd Baron Ashcombe. She also had a younger brother named Mark Shand and a younger sister named Annabel Elliot. Camilla's great-grandmother, Alice Keppel, was a mistress of King Edward VII. This adds a bit of royal scandal to her family tree. Camilla was exposed to styles and people from high society from a very young age. Rosalind, her mother, did a lot of unpaid work for charity. She helped young disabled children at the Che Heritage Foundation. At the same time, her father, Bruce, worked as a partner with companies like Block Gray and Block, and later Ellis Son and Vidler. Camilla's childhood was not like most kids. Author Giles Brandreth said it had the charm of an Enid Blyton book, but with a more grand feel. The Shands were upper-class British people who lived a spoiled life with all the trappings. Camilla had a pretty perfect childhood. She grew up with pets, loved writing, and even won rosettes at local dog shows. She says that her childhood was perfect, full of safety and chances that most people could only dream of. Camilla started going to Dumbrells, a mixed-gender school in Ditchling, when she was 5 years old. She moved to Queensgate School in London when she was 10 years old and was called Miller there. Singer Twinkle was one of her peers and admired how strong and sure of herself she was. One of Camilla's teachers, the author Penelope Fitzgerald, described her as happy and bright. Camilla got off to a good start, but when she graduated from Queen's Gate in 1964, she only had one O-level. Her parents didn't push her to get more, so she didn't. She went to the Montfort Tertiary Finishing School in Switzerland when she was 16 years old. After that, she went to the University of London Institute in Paris to study French and French literature. Camilla made her debut as a debutante in London on March 25, 1965. This was a big event for young women of her social class and marked the beginning of a new life. After her first show, she lived in different flats in Kensington and Belgravia, living with friends and acquaintances from the British upper class. Camilla worked as a secretary and receptionist in the West End. She also did some time at Silkfax and John Fowler, a company that did designing. She was fired from this job, though, for showing up late because she had to go to a dance, which showed how daring she was as a young woman. Princess Anne is on the other side of the royal drama. She is known for being honest and devoted. The Queen and Prince Philip's only child, Princess Anne, was born on August 15th, 1950. Anne was never just another royal child. She was very responsible as a princess. Her drive stood out at Benenden School, where she went. She loved horses and riding from a young age, and she wasn't just good at equine sports, she was great at them. Anne even took part in the Olympics in Montreal in 1976, which made her the first member of the British royal family to do so. Anne wasn't interested in being in the spotlight. She was dedicated to following her purpose. Anne has been a strong person all her life, working hard for many causes and charities. She likes to get things done and make a change, often behind the scenes. For example, she works on youth welfare projects and helps kids through Save the Children. Anne is all about action and making a difference, while some royals might like a more glamorous style. People have been interested in and worried about her personal life. In 1973, Anne married Captain Mark Phillips. Together, they had 2 children, Peter and Zara. In 1992, they got a divorce, but Anne kept her mind on her royal tasks and her children. She later married Sir Timothy Lawrence in a less public wedding, which showed that she liked to keep her personal life quiet. It's always been interesting to see how Anne interacts with her brother, Prince Charles. They are very close, but they disagree on how the royal family should grow. Charles is seen as more modern and open to change, while Anne sticks to traditional royal ideals and doesn't mess around. With someone like Camilla Parker Bowles, who has a complicated past with the royal family, this difference in point of view could easily lead to conflict. The first marriage of Camilla Parker Bowles is now time for us to learn more about her. Camelia Shand met Andrew Parker Bowles, who was a guards officer at the time, in the late 1960s. Simon, Andrew's younger brother, worked for Camilla's dad's wine business and put them in touch. It was one of those classic stories where 2 people from different worlds meet and become friends. For several years, Camilla and Andrew's relationship went back and forth between being together and not being together. But by 1973, they were engaged, which showed how strong their relationship was. This news got a lot of attention in the media, but there's a fun twist. A royal historian named Sally Bedell Smith said that their parents pushed for the news to come out. It seems that their families were so excited about the wedding that they made the announcement before hearing from Camilla and Andrew fully. Royal theatre at its best, right? It was quite a show at the wedding itself. The wedding took place at the Guards Chapel in London on July 4th, 1973, and was Roman Catholic. Camilla and Andrew were married. She was 25 years old and he was 33 years old. Society Wedding of the Year was the name of the event, which had about 800 guests. That's a lot of people. Princess Anne, Princess Margaret, and Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, were among the guests. What a lovely group of guests. The British fashion house Belleville Sassoon made Camilla's wedding dress, which made the event more glamorous. Camilla and Andrew got used to living in Wiltshire after the wedding. Camilla and Andrew made a stylish move to the country. They bought a house in Allington called Hyde Manor, and then later bought Middlewick House in Coram to add to their collection. Moving to the country was a big deal. because it was the start of their family life there. Tony was born in December 1974, and Tom was born in January 1978. Life for the family was shaped by where they lived and how they lived. Andrew wanted to raise the kids as Catholics, but Camilla chose to stay Anglican. Even though they were raised in a Catholic family, it's interesting to see how their kids' schools and personal lives showed a mix of influences. Laura went to a Catholic school for girls, but got married in an Anglican church. Tom, on the other hand, chose to go to Eton over the Catholic Ampleforth College. Their upbringing was a mix of family customs and their own choices. Even though they lived in a cute small town, the marriage had its own problems. Camilla and Andrew broke up in 1994 after being together for 21 years. They didn't make the choice on the spot. They had been living apart for years before they officially broke up. Rosalind, Camilla's mother, died in July 1994, which added to the mental stress and made a tough time even tougher. When they got divorced in March 1995, it was the end of a big part of their lives for both of them. He quickly moved on, and in 1996 married Rosemary Pittman. Rosemary was a part of Andrew's life until she died in 2010. The end of Camilla's first marriage was a big turning point in her life. It set the stage for her future and her relationship with Charles, who was Andrew's close friend. To fully understand Camilla's royal journey, you need to know about her life before and after her first marriage. Through these ups and downs, she learned how to act in the royal family and how to get along with other royals, like Princess Anne. These events give their connection and the way they interact with each other more depth. Now, let's talk about Princess Anne. Her first marriage was to Mark Phillips. Anne and Mark met at a party for horse lovers in 1968. Mark was a lieutenant in the Queen's Dragoon Guards. They met because they both loved horses. By 1973, their relationship was serious enough that they got engaged, which they told everyone about on May 29, 1973. One of the most watched royal weddings ever, their wedding at Westminster Abbey on November 14, 1973, was a big deal. It was shown live on TV and seen by about 100 million people. After getting married, Anne and Mark moved into their country home, Gatcombe Park. Mark turned down an offer of an earldom, which is common for unmarried men who marry into the royal family. This is an interesting fact. Because of this choice, their children Peter, born 1977, and Zara, born 1981, did not get any official titles. Even so, the family grew and now has 5 grandkids, which makes family gatherings very fun. But things weren't always easy for Anne and Mark. It was clear that their marriage was having some problems by August 1989. There was less and less of Anne and Mark Phillips together, which made it clear that they were growing apart. There were rumors of sexual relationships, which made things worse. At first, they said they weren't going to get a divorce, but by April 13, 1992, the palace revealed that Anne had filed for divorce. After only 10 days, it was official. Anne and Mark stayed active with their kids, Peter and Zara, even after they got divorced. They was a co-parent to them. Even though it was hard, they both stayed committed to helping their kids get through it. This part of Anne's life gives us more information about her connection with Camilla Parker Bowles. The personal histories and family relationships of both women affect how they interact with each other and their jobs in the royal family. Knowing these specifics helps us see the bigger picture and how complicated their connections are. For Camilla Shan's second serious romance, she is said to have met Prince Charles in the middle of 1971. That's when Andrew Parker Bowles, who had been a big part of Camilla's life, broke up with her and began dating Princess Anne. Camilla and Charles were in some of the same social circles and went to some of the same events, but they didn't meet officially until much later. Many people think that Charles and Camilla met at a polo match, but author Giles Brandreth says that they were actually introduced at the home of Lucia Santa Cruz, a friend they both had. This meeting led to a close friendship that quickly turned into a love relationship. The relationship between Camilla Shand and Prince Charles was a big deal in their social groups. At polo matches, at Smith's Lawn in Windsor Great Park, where Charles often played, they were often seen together. They also went to Annabelle's in Berkeley Square, which is a popular place to hang out. They became closer, and Charles showed Camilla his family. Camilla then took him to meet her family in Plumpton. But things got hard in their relationship when Charles had to go away for work with the Royal Navy in early 1973. When he got back, their relationship ended quickly. People have different ideas about why they broke up. In his book, Royal, Robert Lacey says that Charles and Camilla may have engaged too soon, and that Charles did not ask Camilla to wait for him, which caused them to break up. Sarah Bradford says in her book Diana that Charles's great-uncle, Lord Mountbatten, may have set up Charles's job abroad so that he could get engaged to his granddaughter, Amanda Knatchbull. Some people also think that Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, didn't like Camilla and would rather Charles marry one of the sisters of the Spencer family, who were close to her friend, Lady Fermoy. There is also the idea that Camilla might have wanted to marry Andrew Parker Bowles instead, since he had been an important part of her life since the late 1960s. Charles may have also chosen to wait to get married until he was 30. Most people who write about the royal family think that getting married to Camilla Shand at that time would have been very hard. Some palace officials didn't think Camilla would be a good choice for Charles's wife. After all these years, Charles's cousin and grandmother, Patricia Knatchbull, said in 2005 that it was clear that Charles and Camilla were a good match. That being said, Patricia Knatchbull made it clear that they couldn't marry Camilla back then. There were so many rules and demands on the heir to the throne that it was not possible for them to get married at that time. Even with these problems, Charles and Camilla stayed friends over the years. Lord Mountbatten, Charles's beloved great-uncle, was killed by the Provisional Irish Republican Army in 1979, a sad event that made their relationship even stronger. At the time of Mountbatten's death, Charles was very upset and turned to Camilla for support. There were rumors going around in their close friends' groups and the Polo Society that they were dating again. By 1980, it was clear that Charles and Camilla were back together in a close relationship. The affair was kept secret from the public, but close friends and people Camilla hangs out with knew about it. It's interesting that Camilla's husband, Andrew Parker Bowles, was said to know about and even accept the affair. This wasn't too surprising, since Parker Bowles had his own affairs while they were married. Even though he was having an affair, Charles married Lady Diana Spencer in 1981. The people in the media mostly didn't know that Charles and Camilla were still dating until the 1990s. The affair became well known after the book Diana. Her true story came out in 1992. It revealed many private parts of Diana's life and made the affair public. In 1993, the Camillagate or Tampongate story got even worse when a secretly recorded phone call between Charles and Camilla was made public. It showed how private and honest their conversations were. The transcripts of Charles and Camilla's private phone call were all over the press, which caused a huge scandal and hurt Charles's reputation in the public eye. There was a lot of negative coverage of Charles and Camilla in the news, with Camilla getting a lot of harsh abuse. Because of all the fuss and media attention, Charles chose to talk about his relationship with Camilla in an interview with Jonathan Dimbleby for the book Charles, the Private Man, The Public Role in 1994. Charles told the interviewer that Camilla was a great friend who had been in his life for a long time and would stay there. Once again, he stated that they were in love after his marriage to Diana ended in 1986. It was an honest admission that shed some light on Charles and Camilla's complicated and long-lasting relationship. It also showed how their personal problems and connections affected their lives. Let's move on to Princess Anne's second marriage to Sir Timothy Lawrence, which is also an important part of her life. Tim Lawrence met Anne in 1986 while he was working on the Royal Yacht Britannia. At the time, Lawrence was a captain in the Royal Navy and an equerry to the Queen. This meant that he often ran into Anne. Their relationship grew over time, and by early 1989, it was getting a lot of attention. The public learned about their connection when some of their private letters were published in The Sun. Even though the news was all over it, Anne and Timothy's bond got stronger. During their engagement, they didn't make a lot of noise. On December 12, 1992, they got married in a small wedding at Crathie Kirk, which is near Balmoral Castle in Scotland. The wedding was small and private, with only about 30 guests, because the pair wanted to be alone. The Church of England had stronger rules about divorce and remarriage. The Church of Scotland, on the other hand, let divorced people remarry. This made Crathie Kirk a good place for their ceremony. Anne made history when she got married again after being divorced. The last princess to do this was Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Anne chose a simple but beautiful outfit for her wedding to Timothy Lawrence. She wore a white jacket over a knee-length dress and a small bunch of white flowers in her hair. Her engagement ring was very special. It had a cabochon ruby in the middle and 3 small diamonds on each side. When the wedding was over, Anne and Timothy's guests went to Crathie Lodge for a private party. Timothy Lawrence didn't get a title like some royal couples do, and he stayed out of the public eye to focus on his work and personal life. As for Charles and Camilla, their relationship was closely watched by the public and the media after they got divorced. Charles hired Mark Bolland, a well-known public relations expert who had worked with him before, to raise Camilla's status in order to improve their public image. In July 1997, they had a little trouble when they were in a car accident. The accident didn't hurt anyone badly, but it did get more media attention to have a good public relations plan. Camilla began going out in public with Charles more often, but it wasn't until 1999 that they went out together for the first time. It was at the Ritz London Hotel and got a lot of attention from the media. At the start of the 2000s, Camilla took on more official tasks. In 2001, she became president of the Royal Osteoporosis Society. People saw her in a better light after this, which changed how people thought about her. Camilla met Queen Elizabeth II for the first time after their relationship became public. It was at a party in 2000 for the former Greek king Constantine II's 60th birthday. People saw this as a sign of approval from the Queen, showing that Camilla was becoming more welcome in royal society. In 2002, she was in the royal box at Buckingham Palace for the Golden Jubilee celebrations, which helped to solidify her place even more. Charles made sure Camilla was safe by hiring full-time security for her, even though she kept living at Raymill House, the house she bought in 1995. She also spent some time at Clarence House, which is Charles's official home. As Charles and Camilla's romance became more well-known, they were often seen together at official events. One such trip was to the Highland Games in Scotland, which made a big splash. Fans of Charles's late ex-wife, Princess Diana, were very against Camilla, even though they were becoming more well-known. A lot of people didn't like it when Charles and Camilla announced they were getting married in 2005. A huge number of letters were sent to the national media by people who supported Diana. The famous Camilla-gate or Tampon-gate scandal, in which a tape of Charles and Camilla's private talk was leaked and hurt their public image even more, made things worse. When Charles asked Camilla to marry him, he gave her a diamond ring that was said to have belonged to his grandmother. This ring was both a personal promise and a nod to custom. Some people were against them getting married, mostly because they didn't want Charles to marry a divorced woman when he became Supreme Governor of the Church of England. But in the end, the Queen, the government, and the Church of England all agreed to it. The couple's wedding was supposed to happen on April 8, 2005, but it had to be moved because Windsor Castle had trouble getting the right licenses. It was held at Windsor Guildhall on April 9, 2005, instead. The wedding was smaller and more personal, with close family and friends in attendance, such as Camilla's son Tom and Prince William, Charles's son. The Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh went to a blessing service at St. George's Chapel and then held a party. The Philharmonia Orchestra and the St. George's Chapel Choir performed at the party. After getting married, Charles and Camilla spent their vacation at Charles's country home. They then started doing public things together. Camilla's public picture got a lot better over time. The Independent named her the most influential woman of the year in 2023, and they did it again. This change shows how well their attempts to improve their image worked and how slowly Camilla became accepted by the royal family and the public. Camilla finally became the Duchess of Cornwall after she married Charles. This was a big step up in her royal rank. Camilla was the second most important woman in the British order of precedence after Queen Elizabeth II. In places where Charles had titles, like Scotland and Wales, she usually came in 5th or 6th. The Queen did a few important things to mark her new role. Camilla is now 4th in the royal order of precedence. This was changed so that it would be more appropriate for private events. This change showed how important Camilla is becoming in the royal family. Camilla also got things that made her new job clear. The Queen Mother used to own the Greville tiara, and the badge of the Royal Family Order of Elizabeth II was one of them. These tokens not only made her more well-known, but they also showed that she was accepted and respected in the royal group. Charles and Camilla moved into Clarence House as their main home after they got married. They also liked staying at Birkhall, their home in Scotland, for vacations and important events, and at Highgrove House in Gloucestershire for family get-togethers. In 2008, they added a second home in Wales. It is where they stay when they go to Wales every year and for other events. Camilla still owns Ray Mill House, which she bought in 1995. Even though she has these new homes, it gives her a private place to spend time with her children and grandkids. She has had a lot of health and public problems over the years. While she is said to have smoked in the past, she is said to have quit years ago. It was announced in March 2007 that Camilla had a hysterectomy, but no other information was given. She broke her left leg while walking in Scotland in April 2010. In November of that same year, she and Charles were involved in a public incident when student protesters struck their car during a time of widespread unrest. Camilla and Charles were lucky that they were not hurt, but the event showed how hard it was. They were also involved in the phone hacking incident in the early 2010s, and it was said that shady media practices used their private information. Even with these failures, Camilla's importance and fame kept growing. It was their 7th wedding anniversary on April 9, 2012, and the Queen made Camilla a member of the Royal Victorian Order. In 2015, Charles even named a bar in Poundbury Village after her. It opened in 2016 as the Duchess of Cornwall Inn. On June 9, 2016, Camilla was brought into the British Privy Council. On January 1, 2022, she was made a Royal Lady of the Most Noble Order of the Garter. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Camilla tested positive for the virus on February 14, 2022, not long after Charles did too. This made her decide to stay away from other people. In February 2021, they both got their first shots of the COVID-19 vaccine. Camilla attended an amazing 3,086 events between 2005 and 2022, showing how dedicated she is to her royal tasks. Her rise from being a controversial figure to a respected member of the royal family shows how hard she worked to fix her public image and how dedicated she is to her job. When Camilla Parker Bowles' husband, Charles III, became king after Queen Elizabeth II died on September 8, 2022, she became known as Queen Consort. She had a very different role in the royal family. 2 days later, on September 10th, Camilla was a part of the Accession Council, which is where Charles was officially made king. The fact that she was there with her stepson William made her new place and importance in the royal family stand out. Camilla made a big change from the norm by replacing the traditional lady-in-waiting job with Queen's Companion. This new job was meant to be less formal and more occasional. Its main purpose was to help the Queen Consort with official events without having to do day-to-day planning or writing letters. This change showed a more modern way of doing royal tasks, which matched Camilla's wish for a less rigid and more adaptable role. Buckingham Palace said on February 13, 2023, that Camilla had tested positive for COVID-19. This meant that she couldn't go to a number of public events. This health setback was a reminder of how hard things can be, even when you're doing your royal tasks. Camilla and Charles were formally crowned on May 6, 2023, at Westminster Abbey in London. This historic event marked a big step in her new life as Queen Consort and showed what her new duties and standing were. After the crowning, on June 16, 2023, Buckingham Palace announced that Charles had made Camilla a member of the Order of the Thistle. This made her even more respected in the British honour system. Camilla went with Charles to St. Giles's Cathedral on July 5, 2023, for a national service of praise. There, he was given the honours of Scotland. In a big change from Prince Philip's time as king, Camilla would not get a parliamentary pension. Instead, the sovereign grant would pay for her public duties and activities. This is part of a more organised way of handling royal money. During 2023 and early 2024, Camilla and Charles made a number of state trips and hosted important foreign guests. In March 2023, they went on a state visit to Germany. It was Charles's first trip outside of Britain as king. There have been problems in Camilla and Princess Anne's relationship because they have different ideas about what royal tasks and values should be. Even though Anne and Camilla have known each other for a long time, she has often been critical of her, especially when it comes to whether she is qualified to be Queen Consort. This stress was more noticeable when the royal family was under a lot of stress, like during the current staff shortage crisis. Camilla's choice to take a break to get some much-needed rest after a busy schedule that included helping King Charles deal with his cancer diagnosis caused a lot of debate. Some people didn't like when she got a break, especially since the royal family had a lot of important things to do at the time. During this time, Anne, who is known for her unwavering commitment and high standards, had been stepping up a lot. She showed how dedicated she was by going on 9 royal events. Anne's hard work and dedication stood in comparison to Camilla's break, which made things worse between them. This situation showed how hard it is to balance personal well-being with public tasks in the royal sphere, where every choice can be closely watched and have an effect on how the family and the public see the person. Camilla Parker Bowles and Princess Anne's connection is very complicated. It's shaped by both their personal lives and the royal family as a whole. Camilla's choice to take a vacation during a very difficult time for the royal family showed how much she and Anne don't get along. Because Anne was very traditional and had high standards, she thought Camilla's break was not a good idea because she had a lot of public and royal duties at the time. Anne, who had been working hard to do her own things, thought Camilla's vacation was more of a treat than something she had to do. Anne and Camilla's disagreements also have roots in the past, especially in the people they know and ties they had in the past. Both women liked the same things, especially horseback riding, and they even dated the same man, Andrew Parker Bowles. This shared past, along with the fact that Camilla and Charles met through mutual friends, made their relationship more complex. Camilla and Charles met at a polo match, which was a very posh way for them to meet. Camilla's brave first words, which were about a connection between their great-grandparents in the past, set the tone for a friendship that would grow into something much deeper and more complicated. This early meeting, which hinted at personal and historical ties, was a sign of how complicated and sometimes difficult their relations would become as they worked together in the royal family. Having historical and personal links as a background adds depth to the ongoing tensions and the bigger story of royal duties and relationships. Royal relationships are very complicated and often very dramatic, which makes for great stories. The complicated pasts of Camilla Parker Bowles, Princess Anne, and Andrew Parker Bowles make their public lives and relationships even more interesting. There's no question that Princess Anne's traditionalist views and her personal and historical ties to Andrew Parker Bowles affected her relationship with Camilla. These relationships are complicated because they show how hard it is to balance royal tasks, personal history, and public opinion. Some members of the royal family, including Anne, didn't like Camilla and Charles's wedding. This shows how personal histories and traditional ideals can affect how the royal family works together. Anne's desire for a more traditional approach to royal life and her past relationship with Andrew Parker Bowles made things difficult between her and Camilla. This look behind the palace walls shows that even within the royal family, rivalries and ties to the past play a big role, which makes their stories even more interesting. If you liked this look at the relationships between royal families and want to see more behind the scenes, please like, share, and subscribe for more interesting content.